The Asus, or Asus, depending how you want to call it, how you learned it. I learned Asus because it was before YouTube and before we heard how it was announced. But the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about why Apple should be very, very scared.
Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Okay, so first let's talk about some of the specifics that we know about the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo. I bought a ZenBook in the past and I really, really liked it. So Computex 2009 was happening in Taipei while I was on my honeymoon in Portugal. Thank you very much to my beautiful wife, Sarah, for marrying me and going on a honeymoon with me. So I wasn't able to kind of check on all sorts of stuff. I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't thinking about technology. I was just getting out of the work mood because I just wanted to be on vacation, be on honeymoon, enjoy the company of my wife, enjoy the setting. We were in Portugal. We were in Lisbon. The weather was perfect. Everything was perfect. But in the meantime, Computex 2019 was happening in Taipei. So as I get back, I start to learn about, as the entire world did, the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo, and how surprisingly, I will say this, that I was pleasantly surprised that it doesn't, to me, just my opinion, this doesn't seem gimmicky. This seems like it's something that works. But let's talk about the specs of the ZenBook Pro Duo, and then we'll get into my opinion of it and why Apple should be scared. So it comes in a traditional 15 and 14-inch model, and the specs, let's talk about what's under the hood before we talk about its standout feature, that second screen. The specs, it's going to come up with an i7, i9, 8 cores. What is it? Really, the RTX 2060, 6 gigs of video RAM, up to 32 gigs of system RAM. What's the i9? It's the 9th gen i9, so it's going to be 2.4 gigahertz base clock, 60 megabytes cache. That's the top tier that's available. It's got the Bluetooth 5.0, Wi-Fi 6, Thunderbolt 3, and 2 USB 3.1 Type A ports, and a full-size HDMI 2.0 port, Amazon Alexa control, whatever, IR webcam with Windows Hello. And so it's impressive specs. It's about what you would expect in a flagship laptop in 2019. So the standout feature of this, and I'm sorry I'm not covering the specs so intimately, but really, like I said, it's flagship for the course. It's par for the course. So it's going to be really, really good. 8 cores, just forgive the phrasing, balls to the wall performance out of this thing. But that's really not what's so important about it. It's that dual screen. So the top screen is going to be at a standard 4K resolution. What is the 3840 by 2160, the standard 4K resolution? But the bottom screen, that is just above the keyboard shifted down. By the way, if you're just listening to the podcast, the Geek Therapy Radio podcast, make sure you hop over to Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube and subscribe there, because I'm putting this video of what I'm saying up on YouTube and I can show you the thing. It just works better. In this sort of medium, what I'm dealing with here, what I'm trying to describe to you here, works better if you can see it. So if you're watching on YouTube, of course, I'm going to have B-roll playing from Asus and all that good stuff. So if you're just listening, head over to the YouTube. The link is in the description below of the podcast, of course. So I highly encourage you. I just, on a side note, surpassed 1,100 subscribers, past the 1,000 subscriber milestone. So thank you very much for that. I found a winner for the 1,000 sub giveaway, and I'm going to do a video about that very shortly here. So that's really great. Back to the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo. The bottom screen, that is the standout feature of this notebook. It's a 4K screen there on the bottom above the keyboard. The keyboard is recessed down to the very, very front of the laptop, which takes some getting used to. It's not the end of the world. It takes some getting used to. That design is nothing new. It's been out for a couple years now. But that bottom screen is also 4K, 3840 by, here's where it's a little different, 1100 pixels. So 3840 by 1100. So not true 4K aspect ratio like we're used to, but it's a nice big display. And as far it's 4K because if anything else, the pixel density or the DPI. That is remarkable. And I was worried. About this. I'm going to be real honest. I was worried that this was going to be too gimmicky because we are coming not hot off the heels. The touch bar on the Apple MacBook Pros, the 15 and the 13, has been largely panned by the industry as being almost useless. And I would argue on that point, that why the touch bar is almost useless is twofold. One, they got rid of the function keys. For the love of God, why would you get rid of the function keys? F1 through F12, whatever. We want the physical button. We always want the physical buttons where available. Tactile feel is always better, so let's get rid of the function row and put a touch bar. And here's the reason why it failed. Not why it's getting panned almost universally by critics. The touch bar, I'm not sure what the actual resolution on that touch bar is, but it's not designed to be a secondary screen. It's designed to be basically programmable buttons. It provides macros that you can use in certain software titles. It's supposed to supplement the software, supplement the top screen. It's not its own individual bottom screen. It's just a supplementary display down there that's very thin, about the width of a pencil, what have you, marker, what have you. It's very small. And the reason why it's gimmicky and why it's not really so fondly loved is that touch bar requires that software developers write specific software for that touch bar. Specific supplementary software for the touch bar. So, for instance, if you're using a recording software like, you can't use Cakewalk on Mac OS, but let's say you're using Pro Tools or something like that. Theoretically, on the bottom, you could have different sliders, different functions, different controls for, let's say, the decay time of a reverb. Down there on the touch bar, which you can manipulate with your finger. I've tried this in when I was at Micro Center, and the touch bar, it's one of those things that's a neat concept, I guess, at first, but then you use it and you kind of really think about it, it's gimmicky. It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick that in real life application for a lot of people doesn't really work versus just give me the freaking function keys back. So, I'm setting the stage here to tell you why I think the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo's dual display down there on top of the keyboard is welcoming, and it's a surprise that to me it's not a gimmick. I'm already thinking of all the ways I could use this. By the way, we don't have a price on this yet. Rest assured it's going to be over $2,000. Good Lord, rest assured that it's going to be over $2,000. It's not going to be top tier MacBook money. It's not going to be It's not going to be breathing down the neck of $7,000. Absolutely not. But I picture this thing in between $1,900 and $3,000. That's kind of where I'm putting it. Top end $3,000. Anyways, so this bottom screen, and once again on YouTube I'll show you, is usable real estate, and Windows treats it as a secondary screen. That means it's 1,000 times more useful because software developers do not have to develop software specifically for the screen. You literally just drag the application down however you want it, open a new window, and put it down there, put multiple windows down there. Windows just treats it as a different screen, just at 3840 by 1100 resolution, which is usable real estate. That's great. So one of the first workflow applications I'm thinking for this, even just basically, is having, let's say you can have folders open with your media. Let's say you're editing video or something like that. You can have folders open down there with the media, with your files, with your video files and audio files to drag up into the timeline of whatever video you're editing, something like that. So you can have multiple folders open down there, kind of keep the main screen uncluttered. I'm not going to go into too many of these use case scenarios, but I am trying to prove the point that this is so much more useful than a stupid touch bar. I'm thinking, as somebody who produces a lot of audio, who works on a lot of podcasts, and who actually mixes albums for people on the side, mixes my own music, I use Cakewalk Sonar 90% of the time. The other 10% of the time, I'm in Pro Tools. But in Cakewalk Sonar, for instance, and this can apply to any DAW, any digital audio workstation, on the top you can have your edit window where you're clipping the different tracks back and forth. You're clipping the different regions back and forth or splitting them up or sizing them, whatever you're doing up there, editing, putting effects and everything like that on there. You can have your edit window on top, and you can have your console window with all your faders on the bottom. So you can actually, and as I talk about it, I get goosebumps because this is just, I've been waiting for something like this for years. So on the bottom, you can have the actual faders. Like I have the console, I'll show you right now. The radio console that I work with every single day. It's not really an audio console, but it's the same basic layout. You get the point. You can have your faders on that touch screen. So what that means is I can be listening to it, have my head down, looking at the console as you really should. If you're mixing, you should be mixing with your ears, but I can have my fingers actually on some virtual faders and be adjusting the drum mix to work with the bass line, to work with vocals and backup vocals and the guitar doubles and all sorts of stuff. I can actually use the faders on that bottom screen. Faders up and down, not just little side-to-side touch bar bullcrap like on Apple MacBooks, MacBook Pros, but actual real estate to push virtual faders up and down. That is so tantalizing to me. I want this. I want this thing because as a creative professional who not only works with video content, but also with audio content, the possibilities are endless. Let's say you don't have, you're not into audio, you don't edit a lot of videos, you're not a pro or anything like that, but let's say you're a writer and you write a lot. You're a blogger, you write editorials, you write whatever, you write a lot. You could put your word processor, put Microsoft Word down there on the bottom screen of the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo. You can have it down there and just be typing, and on the main screen have your research material or have videos playing or whatever. Have the videos playing down on the bottom screen, wherever. But I'm just saying, if you're a writer, let's stick to the writing part. Have your word processor down on that big secondary screen above the keyboard, so you're typing up, in your Word document, and you look up to your research material on the top screen. You don't even have to be a professional content creator to appreciate this dual screen laptop. In the past, and I'll start kind of wrapping this up here, in the past we've had different iterations of concepts for dual screen laptops, including displays that slide out from the back or fold out from the back to give you multiple workspaces. This Asus ZenBook Pro Duo looks like the best application to productivity in a dual screen laptop that you can take with you anywhere on the road. I'm going to sell my MSI GS43 VR that I have back here once this thing comes out, because it's not just a gimmick to me. That second screen, really, my mind is just racing, as I'm sure yours is if you're a creative professional, which how you can use that real estate. Real quick to wrap this up, I'll touch on how this is a real shot across the bow to Apple and just my ideas on Apple in general in the modern day. And I'll use a very basic example, even though there's two different devices, but it just paints the picture of where Apple's mind is at and where the rest of the industry's mind is at. Asus just displayed the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo dual screen laptop in a very effective layout that's going to work for a lot of people, that has a lot of productivity professionals drooling over this. Versus Apple, who had the touch bar, which almost no productive professional cared about at all. So Asus is doing this innovative thing, putting the dual screen laptop together, the Pro Duo. What is Apple doing? An iterative update to the MacBook Pro line. They included the next generation of Intel processors, added a couple extra cores, which is fine. We have yet to see how performance is going to really be tapped into with this, because they didn't change the chassis. Again, this is not a redesign of the MacBook Pro. This is just an iterative update to the internals that already struggle with heat management because physics are a thing. So while Asus is pushing the ball forward technologically and innovating, keyword innovating, Apple has released a new iPod Touch. Let that sink in for a second. Apple has just released a new iPod Touch. Not a cell phone, not a smartphone, iPod Touch. It does not need to exist. The iPod Touch does not need to exist. It costs upwards of $400. You can't make cellular calls with it. Why does the iPod Touch exist in this day and age of freaking smartphones? Oh, my phone is recording this, the video of this. So I'm painting the picture that Apple has lost its way currently. I don't hate Apple. My appreciation for Apple ebbs and flows with they seem to flirt and have just these closet trysts with settling. Apple is settling right now. I hope they've got something fancy up their sleeve with new 2019, hopefully MacBook Pros. I did a whole video of that recently, which I'll link to up here if you're watching the video. But Apple is not innovating right now. They're giving us a new iPod Touch. While Asus and the rest of the industry is innovating, and changing the game. Apple is resting on laurels. Apple better have something huge up their sleeves. They just got to start innovating again. One of the reasons we love Apple, and a lot of us who talk a lot of smack about Apple, it's not that we hate Apple. It's not that their devices are 2 years behind everything else, but 4 times the price as everything else. And people say, Mac OS experience. No! $4,000 Mac OS experience. I'm getting a little verklempt. Sorry about that. It's not enough to justify. The reason why we harp on Apple so frequently in modern days is just that they've lost their way and they don't innovate anymore. We want Apple to innovate again. We can't wait for Apple to innovate again. It's not just the price. We're willing to pay the price if it's for something innovative and pack leading in terms of hardware and performance. It's not. So you have companies like Asus making the ZenBook Pro Duo, which is pushing the ball forward. Apple should see the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo and quake in their boots that they better release something soon that's going to contend with or hopefully blow something like the ZenBook Pro out of the water. That's my thoughts on that. It's just that Apple is not innovating anymore, and that pisses a lot of us off because we grew up with Apple innovating. Remember the first iMacs? Remember the iPod? Remember the iPhone? All these innovations. And yes, you can argue, and I promise I'll wrap this up here. Yes, you can argue that Apple did not invent the concept of the MP3 player. They didn't. I had a Diamond Rio way back in the day. It was an MP3 player. It was an iPod before iPods exist. Apple takes existing technology and packages it in a very sexy way, a very sleek, very user-friendly way. Apple doesn't invent hardly anything. They just take what exists in the world and puts it together into an innovative thing. Case in point, the iPhone. The iPhone took the BlackBerry and the iPod and smacked it together. Just a phone with no physical buttons other than the home screen, a volume rocker, and a whatever silent mode thing. But they brought the smartphone into existence, basically. They changed the world with the iPhone. They changed the world with the iPhone. They changed the world with the Apple Lisa, Macintosh, whatever, back in the day. They didn't change the world with the iMac, but they made the computer very, very sexy at that point. It wasn't just a gray box anymore. It was a colorful thing that they turned it into an art form, and they innovate by taking things that exist and just making them a lot better. They're not doing that anymore. They haven't done that for a long time. What did they do that innovates since the iPhone? You know what? I'm wrapping it up here. The Asus ZenBook Pro Duo has my nerd antennas going crazy right now. I want this thing. This thing looks badass. I want it. I can already think of so many useful things that I can do with it. So much room for activities. Thank you for listening to Midweek Geek here on Geek Therapy Radio. Make sure you stay tuned for the broadcast on Saturday nights, 10 p.m. on KPRC 950 AM in Houston. I dropped the podcast a day before the broadcast because the broadcast, let's be honest, the broadcast that airs on the radio is just promotion for the podcast. It's 2019. Let's get real. So anyways, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to Geek Therapy Radio podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio on YouTube, all that good stuff. GeekTherapyRadio.com for more information. Geek Therapy at iHeartMedia. If you want to email me, it's geektherapy at iHeartMedia. And until next time, I'll see you later. Be good to yourselves. Lean into your geek thing. Embrace your geek thing, whether you like to paint or play with Lego or you code or you program or you build speakers or work on cars. Lean into your geek thing. It's beautiful that we all have a geek thing because we are all geeks about something. Till next time, see you guys later.